I really see the world through stories because of my background in film studies and the work I do in social media. And I would argue that, for me anyway, the Zeitgeist movement was like that pin. So for my entire life, ever since I was very young, I understood on an intuitive level that there was something wrong inherently with the system. It felt very painful for me to exist in the world and to see all the problems that were existing. And I found that a lot of the adults in my life couldn't see it. So I would challenge them and get them to think about it a little bit differently, and I was always met with them not being able to see. And I think that for a lot of people, when the Zeitgeist films came out online and went viral, there were a lot of people that were ready for those films, as I'm sure all of you in this room were in that camp. But there were other people who were not. And so as I joined the chapter and got involved in Zeitgeist Toronto, and we were holding these town halls and talking about the issues and exploring what the system is and why it is causing all of these problems that we face, and how we could kind of imagine ourselves out of it, it really became apparent that talking about the issues with people was not necessarily getting through to them. It's like you just came up against a wall. It was too much for people. So that's where I think as a team we became interested in exploring a way to get around that barrier. Peter often talks about film or art as a way to sneak around the ego, kind of get in the back door, where people are just kind of in a different mindset. So they don't feel like they're being pummeled with something, especially something negative, like the stuff that we talk about. A lot of people interpret all of these topics as very negative, and they have a hard time navigating them. So what would be a way for us to help people sneak in the back door? So what I would say is that the root socioeconomic system that we have right now is actually a form of storytelling, and people are locked into that story. They can't see outside of it, and so that's what I think we need to do, is we have to help people see outside of the story and imagine differently. So I'm just going to read a quote briefly from Peter's book, The New Human Rights Movement. Plug, everybody. It's amazing. You should get it. So from that premise, the architecture of not only the economy, but of society itself has been derived, again rooting back to trajectories set in motion from the Neolithic Revolution onward. This root socioeconomic orientation then justifies competition, self-interest, hierarchy, inequality, and oppression. It is important to make clear that the economy is not some secondary institution that is only engaged when needed. Rather, economic decisions permeate virtually everything we do. And then he goes on to say, put another way, a thought syntax is created in which people narrowly navigate life, focused on a contrived game of economic survival. And over time, our brains literally become wired to this dominant worldview. And that's where you get what I ran up against all my life with adults, is that's just the way it is. Life is just unfair. Why is there a homeless person sleeping on the street? Well, it's just unfair. That's the way it is, without being able to see around it. So I think if we frame the issue in terms of storytelling, we can really see why people have gotten locked into this mindset and can't imagine differently. We really evolved with storytelling. Our brains are wired for it. It gets to the emotional centers, it releases dopamine. It allows the brain to make connections in ways that just giving people facts does not. And in fact, there's a lot of research now that researchers have been doing that shows that facts really don't change people's minds. No matter how many times you tell somebody that, every day in the USA, there's enough straws, single-use plastic straws, used to circle the Earth 2.5 times every day, just in the US. Doesn't matter how many times you tell people that, they're still going to drink out of straws, because they're just not, they can't see it. This is because we as a species actually developed in conjunction with storytelling. We story told our way into existence. So I would argue that we can storytell our way out. So this is from the Basic Income Conference. It's a tweet from Scott, who's a basic income influencer. And at this conference, there was a lot of people talking about this. We need to get good at telling the story of the new economy to help people see it differently. So that's where we come to the library of things that we started. We started with the tool library. We have 3 locations now. And 2 of those locations include a sharing depot, which is just more stuff beyond tools, so camping gear, toys, board games. It's a space where people can go to borrow what they need rather than purchase things individually. And I think if you take storytelling out of just the context of writing books or making a film, you can actually see project-centered activism as a form of storytelling. You invite people into a space to enact a behavior that they're not used to. And it changes the brain in ways that you cannot do by just telling them. So for me, I have a daughter, and we go and we borrow toys, and I can't describe the feeling. You really have to feel it for yourself, of going in there and selecting a toy with her to bring home for a week or whatever, and taking it back. Just putting it back. It's an amazing feeling. And my daughter is totally locked onto it. Like, she gets it right away. She knows which toys that she's borrowed, and she goes and gets them to bring back and get a new one. Her worldview is already being shifted because of that process. So these library spaces that we have are really beyond the story that we often tell, which is the environmental benefit, obviously, of borrowing stuff. Why on earth would you have a drill sitting in a basement of every house or apartment in Toronto when drills are only used for, and I think it's an average of 13 minutes in their usable lifespan, and the rest of the time they sit depreciating. So all those resources that are involved in making that drill, shipping it all over the place, and then disposing of it, it's a waste. So that's the story that we kind of use to pull people in. And it's a story that people can really relate to and that they get. But there's a bigger thing happening with our library spaces, which I'll get to in a second. Through our libraries, we've also been able to pair up with other organizations who are also doing great things. So the Repair Cafe Toronto, we invite them into our space every Sunday at St. Clair, and they repair people's things for free and teach them how to fix them. So I had like a hand steamer that broke, wasn't shooting the steam out, and I brought it to the Repair Cafe at the Tool Library. And it took them a long time to break in, because obviously they manufacture these things so that you can't get in. But once they got in, it turned out to be just a little calcium buildup in the tube. We just blew it out, and it was good to go. So that's another way for people to think about their stuff differently. Why is stuff so difficult to fix? Why is it built to break? What happens when we start challenging our system and orient it towards longer-term use of stuff, repairing and implementing tax breaks, which they've done in Sweden on repairs, so that it stimulates the repair sector and gets more people repairing more goods, and it incentivizes people to repair. This is Sophie. She's a zero waste blogger. So we also partnered with Saponetti, which is a zero waste soap distribution company. So we have them in our spaces where people can come and refill their jars with hand soap, laundry, shampoo, conditioner, and avoid the single-use plastic. So again, you don't tell people, stop using single-use plastic, it's terrible for the environment. You invite them into a space where they can actually act. And through that action, they start thinking, like, why are we using all this plastic? It's unnecessary. Can we ask our governments to build in laws around changing that? And then Boomerang Bags Toronto is another organization that we partner with. We run workshops out of our space, and they take unwanted fabrics that are kind of destined for landfill or whatever, and they turn them into reusable bags. So again, it's like, why are we making reusable bags out of new fabrics when we have all this material out there already that we can just reuse and repurpose and make these gorgeous reusable bags that are then meant to boomerang around the community? So you're meant to like carry them with you and hand them to somebody at the checkout when they're accepting a plastic bag. And again, it's like that in itself is a form of storytelling. You're offering somebody an alternative, and in that moment of action, they get to think a little differently about what they're doing. And then we also run workshops. So I think in our current system, a lot of people feel disempowered. They don't know how to do a lot of things anymore. We're not a hands-on culture. So by inviting them into our space, we get to help people relearn that process. And that in itself is very empowering. Making stuff is empowering. I made a set of hexagonal shelves that I found on Pinterest out of wood, discarded wood. And that, even though I'm not a big tool user, they frankly terrify me. But I made myself do it because I wanted to experience the feeling of making. And it's very different than going out and buying some shitty made in China shelves. It's just, it feels different. And now when people come into my home and they're like, oh, I love those shelves, I get to tell them that story. And they get to start thinking differently about it. So we invite people in on Wednesday nights. It's community night. We let them use the space for free because we have fantastic volunteers that are experts in making, and they help people use the 3D printers and the laser cutter and the wood shop. They can repair stuff in the space. So again, it's about inviting people into a space where they can actually experience community in a way that's just outside of capitalism's ability, because in a capitalistic society, you don't experience that level of helpfulness. So yeah, I guess it just really boils down to the fact that these spaces that we're creating, while they're beneficial for the environment, I think the more important point is that they generate a story that's outside of that socioeconomic system that we're in. They get people to start thinking about collaboration, open source, community, feeling supported, feeling connected to something that's bigger, and feeling empowered that they can actually do something to change this ridiculous system. It's not enough to just put this, beautiful ideal out there that we're building a new economy and it's going to be amazing. We actually have to do the groundwork. We have to get involved and start shifting things in a new direction. So yeah, I would just say that no matter what it is, whether it's making a film, making a piece of art, starting lending libraries, getting involved in blockchain, cryptocurrency, time banks, Buns Trading Zone, any of these great projects that are solutions to a lot of the things that Peter references in the Zeitgeist movement and in his book, we can really start building that society, and more importantly, we give people a story that they're not used to and that they can then interpret all of these complex ideas through and feel empowered to change things. Like, we got this, we can do it.